Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make toffee, also known as butter toffee, maybe butter crunch toffee, or even English toffee. And this is what it looks like. On the bottom we have a layer of toasted almonds, then we have our toffee, then we have a layer of dark chocolate, and then even more toasted almonds. This is so good. So the first thing that we're going to do is to toast our almonds. So you will need to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. And then put your almonds, you will need 2 cups, which is 170 grams. I'm using blanched, slivered almonds. You could use sliced almonds as well. So put your almonds on your baking sheet. Put them in the oven for, 8 to 10 minutes or till, like I've already done them here so you can see, lightly brown, and you will start to smell the almonds. And then take them out and then let them cool down to room temperature. So I've already done that. So now what we're going to do, I like my almonds coarsely chopped. Some people prefer finely chopped, so either one, whichever one you want. You can do it just on a cutting board with a knife. Or if you have a food processor, makes quick work. That's what I'm gonna do today. So just put all of your almonds. Okay, there we go. And just gonna process until they're coarsely chopped. Okay, that's good enough. Actually, I did a little more than coarsely, but it really doesn't matter. You just want pieces, you don't want big, gigantic pieces of almond on your toffee, at least I don't, but that looks good. And then we'll get our baking sheet ready for our toffee. So take a baking sheet, put it on a wire rack, and then you can oil your baking sheet, or you could spray it with one of those non-stick sprays. I'm just going to butter it. I've just got a little bit of melted butter here. The toffee, we're going to do it into about a 10-inch square when we do it, so it's 25 centimeters. So which is probably about half of this baking sheet. So there we go. And then I'm just going to eyeball about half of your almonds and do that into, like I said, a 10-inch square, 25 centimeter. You can get out your ruler. I've done this a few times, so I know about the size I need. It's always, and I like to make it put the nuts a little bigger just in case when I'm pouring, I go a little over. Okay, that looks good. Okay, so that's done. Keep these handy. We're going to start our toffee. I'm just going to clean up here. We'll be right back. So now we're going to make our toffee. It is very important to have all your equipment out, all of the ingredients out, because you don't want to be running around the kitchen while you're making the sugar syrup. So we have our baking sheet with our nuts, have the rest of your almonds, and then you will need 6 ounces, which is 170 grams of chocolate. Now you could use semi-sweet, you could use bittersweet, you could even use milk chocolate, whatever you want. The thing is, I'm using like a chocolate bar. I'm using a semi-sweet. Semi-sweet goes from, say, around 55% cocoa content to like 60, and then the 70%, or a little higher than that, 70 is bittersweet, and then of course you have the milk. So whatever you like, but what you want to use is a chocolate that you would just pick this up and just eat it, which I would, but I'm not going to. And then just coarsely chop it like that. Have that ready. You will also need to have 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of pure vanilla extract, and that's for flavoring. And then I'm going to add 1/4 teaspoon, 1 gram of baking soda. The baking soda kind of makes the toffee a little lighter and more crunchier in texture. Some people leave it out, so I'm going to leave that up to you. And then you will need, I have my burner here, you need a saucepan with a lid. Try to use one that has a real heavy bottom to it because you don't want your sugar syrup to burn, and so a heavy bottom will help prevent that. So that, and then you will need either a wooden spoon, or you could have the spatula silicone with the wooden handle. And of course you need a thermometer, because very important, because we're going to take the sugar syrup up to the hard crack stage, which is 300 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 149 degrees Celsius. So you will you can use a mercury thermometer like this one, and I like to have it with the clamp on the back so you can just clip it onto your pot. Or today I love my digital. And again, it has where you can clamp it on to the pot. So either one. So I guess we are ready. So the first thing you will need is 3/4 of a cup, which is 170 grams of, I'm using unsalted butter here. You could use salted. I've just cut it up into chunks so it will melt a little faster. I do like it at room temperature. And then have 1 cup, which is 200 grams of granulated white sugar. Put that in there. 2 tablespoons, 30 grams of just water. And I have 2 tablespoons of light corn syrup. You could use golden syrup, or you could even use a liquid glucose. That's going to give our toffee a smoother texture. And, you know, the big thing, as you probably know when you're making candy, sugar syrup, is the crystallization. And putting just a little bit of corn syrup just helps to prevent that, because we don't want that graininess on the tongue. So now what we're going to do is put this medium high. I'm going to stir it, and we're going to melt the butter and the sugar and bring it up to a boil. And you want to stir it quite often so you make sure that all that sugar has dissolved. Okay, so we are up to a boil. So now stop stirring, and then sometimes, well, what you want to do is either wash the sides of your pot down. You want to get rid of any sugar crystals that may be there. Some people just take water with a pastry brush and then do that. I just like to take my lid and put it on the top of the pot. That'll wash down the sides, and then I set my timer for 1 minute. That'll be long enough so the steam will come up and wash down the sides for me. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, it's been a minute. So there we go. I'm going to just... So now, what we are going to do is just cook our sugar syrup. We are not going to stir it now. That will also help prevent any sugar crystallization. You want this at a good boil. It's maybe a little much. I'm going to turn that down just a bit. You may have to adjust it. And if you see it browning, what I do every once in a while is just swirl my pan like this, and that will stir it. But I prefer not to introduce my wooden spoon to that. And we are going to just let it, I'm going to clamp my thermometer on the side, and I'm going to let it come up to 300 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 149 Celsius. So that will take, maybe close to 10 minutes. And when you put your probe in, don't let the bottom of the probe touch the bottom of the pan. You want it a little up into the syrup to get the proper reading. Okay, we are at 300. You can take it off like a degree or 2 less than that, because once we take it off the heat, the temperature will still rise. So Now what we're going to do is add our vanilla. That's why we want everything out, and our baking soda, and it will bubble up. Wear your mitts, your pot, everything's hot. So just really stir that baking soda in there. Now at this point, you don't want your sugar syrup to have a burnt flavor smell. If you have that, you might not want to put it on. You might want to start again because you don't, this is a lot of expensive ingredients and you don't want to waste them. And you don't want your toffee to be burnt smelling. So now what I'm going to do is just pour right over top of our nuts. Pot is heavy. Problem with the cast iron. I love the pots, but they are heavy. Okay, so that's good enough. And then I'm just going to spread that a little. Get an even layer. As good as I can. That looks good. So now what we're going to do immediately is take your chocolate and just put it over top. And that toffee is so hot, it's going to melt our chocolate for us. This makes such a good gift. Because if you've ever seen this in the stores, it is really expensive. So everyone, you gave this in a little bag or box or something, pretty ribbon, it will be well appreciated. Okay, so there, just kind of put that right in there. So what I'm going to do is just let that sit a minute or two until it starts to melt, and then we can spread it. Now, our pot. Very dirty. And so what I do is I fill it with some water, put it back on the burner, let it come up just to a boil, and then I put the lid onto the pot and just let that sit, turn the heat off, and let that sit. And then what will happen is that will melt all that toffee that's now already hardened. So that's the way you clean your pot. And so I'm just going to let that melt for maybe another minute. Okay, so now let that sit. You can see how it's starting to melt. So you can take the back of a spoon, or I got an offset spatula, and we're just going to spread our melted chocolate over our caramel. I did have a little piece on the side there. And the caramel is nice and crunchy, very smooth. So that is what we want. Another point, whenever you're making sugar syrup, it's good to make it on a day where the humidity is low. Or, I live in a very humid place, so I either I'll admit, I put the air on, or in the winter, I put on my dehumidifier to get that down. I like the humidity. I have a gauge in my kitchen. I like it below 50. I like 48, below, like 48 and under. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so once you do that, then just take the rest of our almonds and sprinkle over the top. And then once we do that, of course, we need to let our toffee cool down and our chocolate to harden. You can just leave it on the counter, but I typically just take, once it cools down where I can, a little, I just take the whole baking sheet and put it into the refrigerator. And I find, you know, depending, half an hour to an hour. I want everything all hard before I take it out and then cut it into pieces. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to finish this off. That looks good. I'm going to let this cool down just a touch, put it into the refrigerator 30 to 60 minutes, and then when we come back, we will try a piece. So now our toffee is nice and cold and firm. I let it sit in the fridge about, I think it's around 45 minutes. And then take a sharp knife and, you know, you can kind of break it or cut it into all different shapes and sizes, just like so. And let's take a little piece here. Let's try some. I don't know whether you can hear that. Very crunchy, so it's really nice. You've got the really almonds, chocolate, and toffee. I mean caramel. What's not to like, really? It's just wonderful. The caramel, nice and smooth, nice and crunchy. You got the nuts. You got I don't know. It's just fantastic. So you can store it in an airtight container. We don't want that caramel going soft on us. You can store it about 2 weeks. You can do it at room temperature, but like I said, I live in a climate that tends to have higher humidity. So my preference is to store it in the refrigerator. And you can also freeze this for about a month. So it's a great thing to, you can make it ahead, like if you want to give it for Christmas presents, you could make it ahead of time and freeze it. Now when you cut it all up, you will have a lot of crumbs. Don't throw those out. One, they can be just your treat, or because you'll have little bits of the nuts and the chocolate and the caramel. Put them over ice cream is really good, but don't waste them. So you have to try this. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.